This VAWatchdog.org news video is brought to you by Bergman & Moore, LLC. Former VA attorneys now fighting VA for you. Call Bergman & Moore at 877-838-2889 or on the web at vetlawyers.com.
In Iraq and Afghanistan, the danger isn't just from the enemy. Female troops also face the threat of sexual abuse by their comrades. The Pentagon says 165 sexual assaults were reported there last year, up 26% from the year before. And as Katie Couric reports, some actions by the military may be making it worse.
It's a potent environment with female soldiers working and living under hostile conditions with their male counterparts. This soldier, who asked us to call him Robert, spent 3 tours in Iraq as a signal unit leader out of Fort Lewis in Washington State.
For the female soldiers, it was far harder to adjust because not only did they have to deal with combat, mortar rounds, rockets, bullets, they also had to put up with male soldiers who were away from their families for a year.
A decorated soldier in his unit, Robert says he went to his command on many occasions after female soldiers had reported they'd been sexually assaulted. But more often than not, nothing was done.
Last thing a commander wants, other than a death in his unit, is a sexual harassment or assault case, because that makes his command look bad.
For Wendy, an idealistic 17-year-old, the military seemed like the answer to her prayers.
I was mostly going in for school, but I also was going in to see the world and travel.
Deployed as a combat medic at the height of the insurgency, Wendy was thrust into a chaotic and increasingly violent situation. Not long after, she experienced another kind of trauma when she was assaulted by a fellow soldier in her barracks while she was sleeping.
He started pushing himself on me, and I wasn't having it. So I started punching him, and I actually kicked him in the groin.
Afraid to go to her command, she took extra precautions, locking her room with a deadbolt, traveling in pairs. But just weeks later, she found herself fending off the sexual advances of a doctor she worked with in the OR. Again, she didn't report it.
He was a doctor, he was a surgeon. And who were they going to believe?
Wendy's experience is not unusual.
Good girl.
Since 2002, the Miles Foundation, a private nonprofit organization that tracks sexual assault within the armed forces, has received nearly 1,200 confidential reports of sexual assaults in the Central Command area of responsibility, which includes Iraq and Afghanistan. Incidents have increased as much as 30% a year. Part of the problem for the increase, critics say, is the quality of today's recruit.
The military is increasingly issuing something called moral waivers, so they can enlist military personnel with felony convictions for crimes like rape and sexual assault.
No, we don't enlist convicted rapists in the armed forces of the United States. If there's a consensus, that kid needs a second chance. I think he's got it in him to be a soldier. Then they'll let him into the armed forces.
In fact, CBS News has learned that both the Army and Marine Corps did issue moral waivers to enlistees with felony convictions for rape and sexual assault, something not acknowledged in this follow-up letter from Secretary Dominguez. But it's not just who enters the military, it's how sex offenders are ultimately punished by the command.
We have documents showing that a private convicted of a rape had a bad conduct discharge suspended so he could deploy to Iraq. How can the U.S. military allow a convicted criminal to go back into a situation where he could easily rape again?
So I'm not familiar with this particular case.
Have you ever heard of this happening there?
I have not.
The Army says it's committed to doing better, with plans of adding 15 special victim prosecutors and 30 criminal investigators by this summer.
We've earned our way through the military. We put in our work, and I think we deserve the same amount of respect. Pay attention.
It's a fight Wendy hopes female soldiers can win. Katie Couric, CBS News, New York.
VAWatchdog.org, the nation's #1 independent veterans website. On the web at VAWatchdog.org.